All right. Hello, everyone. We are live with Lunch Zone. Again, continuing playing some Indigenous games this month for Native American Heritage Month. So what we're going to do first is read our land acknowledgement, and then we will introduce ourselves, and then we'll start playing Never Alone. And we'll talk about the game that was just actually inducted into the MoMA. Of all places
I saw
this
the
year.
post of it.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we acknowledge that in Milwaukee, we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homelands along the southwest shores of Michigami, which is part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. And you can, if you want to, head over to our Twitter. I've just posted a bunch of links kind of related to Never Alone on our Twitter. Should be right up at the top, including the exhibition in the MoMA where it is now. It's in its own, I mean, it's not in its own exhibition, but the exhibition is called Never Alone. After this game. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. You want to introduce yourself?
I am David Kutchik. I'm a PhD student in English here at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
And I am Thomas Malby, professor of anthropology here at UWM, and those off screen.
I'm Brian Thomas, a student of anthropology here at UWM.
And I'm Luke Conkle, first time ever saying this on air, PhD student in anthropology.
Yay!
Formerly master's student in anthropology.
Awesome. All right, let's get into it. I've never played this before,
We're
so
not playing Never Alone this week, right?
what?
Or we're not playing Growing Up in Japan.
No, we are not. Thank you for saying that. I forgot to update that little thing. So with this game, cultural insights are part of this game, where you can kind of watch these videos. These have been developed in collaboration with the Inupiat from Alaska, right? Native Alaskan peoples. There on the Never Alone website, there are 16 cultural ambassadors on their website that kind of helped out in creating some of these cultural insights and videos that are included within the game. Okay.
And there are 2 new ones, apparently.
Yeah, let's just play this first one.
One of the things I think a lot of people need to understand is we are a museum piece.
Oh, let's bump it up a little more.
The Inupiat people are a living people and a living culture. Even though we're in northern Alaska, which covers this vast area from Nome all the way over the Canadian border, is that there is this extreme value of interconnectedness and interdependence.
It's a hunting society, a gathering society from thousands of years.
This is what creates our culture.
That special relationship between humans and the natural world and the animals, and that it teaches you how to have a society that doesn't do too much harm to the world.
Love and respect for nature, for one another, for our elders. Very, very fundamental value, key to life.
Our values are something that bind us all. The importance of sharing with one another, the importance of spirituality, and the connection to the land, our traditions, how we hunt, sharing of stories and songs and dances.
I'm Inupiaq. I'm from the Arctic Ocean.
I am Inupiaq.
It's very important to me. It's who I am as a person.
And we're very proud of who we are, and we want to continue that.
Values.
Definitely.
Where did the money for this game come from? Does anyone know?
I believe part of it came from the indigenous community. Part of it did. I think part of it might have come from the Alaskan government, but I'm not sure.
Interesting.
But yeah, pretty good production values on this. It makes me think of you can play the game. It makes me think of last week we were talking about how the educational part was in the game itself, and so
Yes.
it's got this different
Right, the whole notion
into
of
it.
kind of the delivery of sort of nuggets of information, whether about the game or about something like a culture that the game is meant to introduce learning about. There's all these kind of different architectural decisions that computer game designers make, and even something as contingent as the need for loading screens. And some video games created this affordance, right? Like the spandrels of San Marco, right? It's like there's this thing that just has to be there architecturally, and then it gets elaborated and filled in
with tips,
with something, whether it be tips or otherwise, and
snarky comments.
it becomes and then it becomes part of our set of expectations for games. So maybe even in a game where that's not architecturally necessary, the game designer has the opportunity
and a funding
to
source
use it.
for those games, right? Like NBA 2K's 21 was using their loading screens to sell ads, like
right,
and like that's
right.
Like it's an ingenious. They faced a lot of pushback for that, but like nobody's playing during a loading screen anyway,
Yeah, very much of a shadow puppet style here, right? Much like the Indonesian shadow puppet theater and similar traditions.
Is that indicative of like Inuit societies? I don't know much about
I don't know enough about it to say. I do know shadow puppet practice and kind of craft and technique traveled very widely, but I wouldn't want to jump to the
Make an
conclusion that
assumption.
it influenced.
Actually, there's a little video of it. These are all like a minute or a half.
Well,
so
that's Scrimshaw. That's going to be the carving.
Yeah, I was gonna say I noticed some like burning on, or it looked like kind of burnt edges on some of the things.
Mm-hmm. I was noticing in particular not only the kind of illumination and the silhouette quality, but the articulation of the limbs at certain points is reminiscent of the Javanese shadow theater.
This is an interesting concept. This idea of like this historical content being embedded in the game, but also a thing that you earn as you play, right? So a couple of months ago, Matthew was playing Age of Empires 2, 3, 2, one of them. The newest version, Age of Empires 4, actually like has monetized, not monetized, but gamified access to historical videos, and that you have to like beat a level, and then you get to see like how crossbows made war different or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion of like like historical information being a reward for in-game play is
Right.
interesting.
Right.
Yeah, and like
if there is in-game play in this game.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Because in other games, it's like the narrative that you unlock, right? Whether it's by developing affinity between characters and you get to see their relationship go, right? Or just like completing a level, you kind of get to go further through the story as part of it. So in a game like Age of Empires, where it's really not about a continuous narrative,
Right?
Right? Like that's
Or it may be a continuous narrative, but there are huge gaps between each like chapter. Right? Like you're talking about like the English campaign, but there might be 100 years between any two levels.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoa, not as good a jumper as you are, clearly. See the fox in the background? I love that.
I think that's our little fox companion.
The visual aesthetic here is really interesting. And is reminiscent of that shadow puppet, right? Like they're still leaning into that theme.
Uh-oh. Let's just try single player.
Yeah. Oh, you'll be plenty light on the ice. And
Yep.
You won't.
There we go. Whoa.
There was a Zelda game that has like a similar dark kind of Twilight. It was the Wii one that had like a dog that followed you around, and
Oh, in the Wii one, there's the wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be Wolf Link. In
Not
one
that
of
they're at all related in any other way.
it is always interesting having to control two characters in the same environment. It kind of depends on the game and what the point of the game is. So speaking of Legend of Zelda, for example, Spirit Tracks, which is a DS game, you only in certain levels do you also control like the ghost of Princess Zelda. In certain levels in order to like move ahead, and it's kind of the same kind of puzzle thing, right, where you kind of switch back and forth in order to solve puzzles. But that is obviously not a platformer.
Yeah.
Right, that's going to be more of like a puzzle adventure kind of game. Oop.
Gotta hit space over and over, I'm guessing? No?
Nope. Oh.
At a certain tempo, maybe?
Maybe. There we go.
Yeah.
You're spamming too much.
Yeah. It's kind of an implicit statement about that kind of the frenetic,
Yeah.
you know, mashing. It's a beautiful game.
Yeah, I love the foreground and the background, right? The parallax of it in a way. Okay. But yeah, it's interesting because usually I think specifically like kind of the assumption in games is that you kind of have one body that's in a space, right? And then you need to and then you need to navigate that space with that body, right? And I think a lot of game scholarship always kind of, even when we talk about like the body of the player versus the body of the character, right? It's usually always with the idea that you're going to be controlling one person. So then adding this like second entity that you need to control, even if it's something as simple as, you know, a fox kind of following you along, right? There are other games where you can't, like, the screen won't move forward unless you have both your characters moving. You know, you have to do them both simultaneously. Oops.
Oh.
No, you're dead. And the fox is sad. Give me the sad note.
Okay, I'm gonna... Oh, shoot.
I wonder if it has to be pushed over and over again, or if it's...
I think it's
hold
just
down.
once. You just have to, like...
It's the way you get down.
Yeah.
I see.
And I think there's a constant time to the wind.
Yep.
To learn the intervals.
Yeah, rhythms.
Ooh. That's cool.
Wow.
Oh.
No.
The fox can't go in there either. Okay.
It's still cold. He's got fur. It's still cold water.
Ooh, I get it now.
Oh, this is like the annoying levels in Mario, the platform.
You're talking about the best levels of Mario?
I guess the most challenging. You know? If you're not trying to phone it in, yeah.
But that moving platform, right, kind of like you were saying, Thomas, right, where the frenetic button mash,
right?
When platforms move, you can't just you know, press walk. Yeah, you can't just do the full steam ahead.
Yeah. Tempo, you know, in the social theoretical sense, right? Borgio makes a big deal about talking about it, and he's really smart to do that. Tempo in games as a narrative resource, a resource for trying to more than just narrative, convey the disposition that you're trying to convey. It's kind of cool to notice that in this game.
And it also makes sense with in terms of the environment, right? Where if you're in a blizzard, you can't just like, you have to conserve energy, right? In this kind of space, you can't just kind of blindly.
It's not a kind of dominating approach, right?
Yep.
To nature.
Tempo's also interesting if we consider the like history or the impact that QuickTime events have had on the gaming industry, right?
Mhm.
Like, and their anti-button mashing technology in QuickTime.
I feel like there haven't been a whole lot of QuickTime events in games I've played recently.
Oh no, they're largely not popular anymore, but they certainly set a tone. In
Yeah.
There's a
PS2
residue of
era.
them kind of in games today. I think that's
The impacts are still there, even if the mechanic is not.
Whoop.
It looks like owls are checkpoints too.
you know, you could say the mechanic is gone, or you might say the mechanic has just been refined. You know?
It's less obvious now, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if like you're fighting, a boss in Elden Ring, the tempo of that fight, right, could have been informed by, oh my gosh, the types of QuickTime events, right, that existed in games.
I mean, the From games are just such an interesting lineage of games because the mechanics of each game depend on a different, like, success depends on a different mechanic, right? Whether it's Demon and Dark Souls that depend on like the evasion mechanic and like the blocking mechanic. Like the samurai theme game where like you have to press the attack, right? Like if you let up, that's when the monsters like get their.
There's a super cool detail, which is if you watch the fox's tail, just before the wind picks up, it will go forward as if there's a bit of a vacuum effect.
Oh, that's cool.
That's real detail. That's really cool.
Finally, we made it.
I like this a lot. It's really pretty. The mechanics are like, they feel meaningful.
Yeah, and you have to wait, right? I think that's. Come on. Ooh, maybe I have to press it at the same time. Yep.
No.
All right, here we go. We're gonna unlock these. Ooh.
Yeah, she's got to get to the other end there. I don't know if you have to control her to do that.
Kind of like
There
we go. I like being the fox a little more, just because I like having that light, airy jump to it.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, XLDM. Thanks for joining us.
Hey.
I'm phoning it in today. I'm limping and not much use.
What did he say?
He fell off his bike yesterday.
Oh no! I'm
Ouch.
sorry to hear that.
He's got a bum ankle.
Oop.
Right?
Oh, that was a heck of a jump. You did that on purpose, David, right?
Thank goodness foxes have opposable thumbs.
You're just trying to get ahead on the speed run of this. That's all.
It's
But-
interesting that there's obviously some sort of like stats involved, right? Being the fox or being the player, the human character.
Fox can
But-
crouch. You know.
Yeah, but there's not. There's no tracking. You know, you just kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
Can the fox brace, or is that?
Yeah. I'm just bad at bracing.
Is there no benefit to playing the human? Is I guess the question.
I bet there were. Yeah, I wonder if we just haven't seen that mechanic yet.
Yeah, I think from what I remember, because I think Janelle played this a couple years ago. From what I remember is there are certain puzzles like moving things, right, or being able to that the fox just can't do.
There's something about this game that really reminds me of Little Big Planet.
Yeah, a little bit.
Is that the Sackboy series?
Yeah, the kind of co-op motion of it. Something about the way the jumps are done and the way the environment is done, the textures, the ragdoll physics behind it. It's very familiar in that way.
I like the kind of softness of this too.
Oh no.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Seeing her reaction first was very powerful.
Yeah. You know, this makes this with like animating Scrimshaw, right? Like the idea of like going from a 2D art form to like that, you know, to the, I guess it is still 2D, whatever, but to the digital, like I wonder what that process is like, because I feel like, I mean, you can kind of be informed by how other 2D art forms become animated, but like, how do you conceptualize going from, you know, this art form to a digital form?
Especially because the Scrimshaw, actually, when you think about it, is 3D in several ways,
yeah,
right?
Oh, yeah,
It's inscribed. It's also a curved object, you know. The way the light interacts with it, the way it's held. You know, you're trading off a lot of those affordances for how you're trying to represent it here. That's a real challenge.
It's almost like translating languages through Google Translate and then translating them back. Or that's how they came up with like Yoda's speech pattern in Star Wars.
Oh.
Because they translated the script to Latin and then translated the words back to English, and so that's why like verbs are last and stuff.
I think the choices about camera control are becoming really interesting, as you notice them. We saw her reaction before we saw the village. We just saw the kind of lift with the loon head, like unnecessarily, you know, in a great way to sort of take you up into that level before it came back down to where you could see the ground. That was cool.
And there's a vignette around the outside. It's sort of like the slotted snow goggles.
The slotted what?
The slotted snow goggles.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah.
So you get that shading around the outside.
Oh, right.
That's a really good catch. I noticed the goggles, but didn't put that together with the imagery.
Yeah, there's an introduction to what your visuals are like, perhaps, you know, right?
Oop. That should have just gone completely. Oh.
Hey, that was pretty good though. You know, you cleared it.
There
nice.
we go.
Wow.
There we go.
Well done.
Oh. I am so I'm just so not used to doing, you know, controlling two people or two things, right? It's just
XLDM says, and if it's drawn, it's also in motion. I assume that's related to the 2D versus 3D
Yeah.
art.
So she'll have to go back maybe a bit. Yeah.
There.
Ah.
This is rad. I like this
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah,
pretty great.
It's just beautiful.
Beautiful.
And it's really hard to when you have any kind of environment where it's a very similar color all around, right? Like it's sometimes hard to make that distinction between what's in the foreground and what's in the background, right? It's all shaded very well to make it really clear what you can grab onto and what you know
There's
what you can
clearly a lot of
interact
skill
with.
put into these.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of the art design.
The language is wonderful. to hear too, partly because you don't hear it very often, and it highlights it.
This is Inuit is Athabascan language family.
I'm not gonna try and guess.
Fair enough. I'm trying to remember 20-year-old coursework. That's not.
But that's the thing about it with the subtitles. You know, like if you're playing a
Oh,
game
yeah, you
that's
got the
in
rope.
German or Swedish or whatever, even in Swedish, right? Every once in a while, you catch a word and you're like, you see it in the subtitle. Okay, there's no pairing here.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd be hard pressed
It's so distinct a
to
language.
identify it.
Enemies, maybe?
Troublemakers of some kind, that's for sure.
Right.
There's your check.
Nice.
There we go.
Oh, that's not checkpoints. That's just where you earn new videos.
Oh.
Here we go.
Yeah, the other thing this is reminding me of now, actually, especially with the two different figures and sort of needing to solve puzzles, is the cave, which I regularly play with Crystalie Malone when she has me do a guest spot in her class at Madison. And there are all these kind of archetypical figures. There's a scientist, there's a knight, there's a farmer, there's all these different people. And you're going through a cave, and it's very similar to these moments in this game right now, where you need to jump back and forth between different characters to do different things. Although you can multiplay, like this one can too, right? And then you're both each controlling one. I wonder if there will ever be a third.
I know they're working on a sequel.
I meant like a third, whether we'll ever get a
Oh,
third character to
in this
control.
game,
In the cave, you can have 3 or 4 even, I think.
So it's very reminiscent of like the top-down isometric games from like D&D
Ooh, look out.
or Marble Out of
Ooh.
View.
Oh.
You weren't
Poor
controlling the
fox.
fox. It's unfortunate. Oh, it doesn't always throw to the same spot either.
Probably throws to where you were.
Yeah.
So if you're playing this multiplayer, it's 2 people.
Oh,
in a
get you to
room.
throw it on the other end to weight it down. Yeah.
There we go.
I think it's side by side.
So you're
Ooh.
sitting with each other with different controls. I was thinking the style of it too almost reminds me of that. It's a really simple name, but I'm not going to think of it.
Did you get the drum?
Yep.
Oh,
We're
there it
playing
is,
in
on
like
your
this
back.
really sandy environment, and it's Constance Steinkooler talks about it a lot.
Is it one?
Journey?
No.
Journey, yeah, where you don't realize necessarily at first. Well, now you
Right.
do. But initially, you didn't realize that it was a multiplayer game until you started noticing these little patterns. Right?
Right.
But in this similar way, the 2 characters are playing off each other, right? You have to rely on each other's abilities and maneuvering.
All right.
It'd be an interesting challenge to play, multiplayer, but not communicate. You know.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of a game called The Way, which is an online. I think it was. I forget if it was Flash or not, so I'm not sure if you can still play it. But it was a game where you got randomly paired with someone else who was playing it online, right? There's no audio interface or anything you can do. So it's just you are on the top screen and your partner's on the bottom screen, or vice versa, and you have to do. Basically, you're in different areas for like the whole first half of the game where you have to like collaborate to, push boxes down to the next level or, hit switches or whatever. And then the second half of the game is then where you're like together in the same room and have to complete puzzles together all without, speaking. And you can signal and you can, use, I think you can do like whistles or something to like help direct your partner. But it's like something where you have to rely on another person without speaking to them in order to like make it through. That kind of in a way, like, it's almost kind of nicer than working with a person, like, right next to you, because then you can't get mad at them as easily. Because you have constraints. So you're like, I can
The
understand why
attenuated-
they
right.
don't understand what I'm doing.
Attenuated channels. The lack of bandwidth can be productive, right?
Stated noise.
It makes me wonder, you know, like what is the preferred way, the intent of how this game should be played? Because like I get the sense that like your ability right now to play as both is just because then otherwise people wouldn't.
You couldn't play it
Right.
without other people that way.
Well, if someone would like to take my spot and take over for the fox, you should feel free to do
I'm analog, man.
that.
Okay, so that's the path. Okay. Oh. There we go. Cool. So I can do that to unlock.
There's the bright spot.
Cool.
I
And-
cannot get over this. The aesthetic of this. Like,
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah, it's just so beautiful.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, oh wow.
Also, viewers, we are watching chat, so feel free to comment.
You know, it's interesting to think about games that also make use of a kind of spare audioscape, spare palette. Things like Hollow Knight, you know, and things like that, or what is it, Ori and
And the Blind Forest.
and the Blind Forest, and but they put themselves forward as, I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm ignorant of certain things, but I gather that those kinds of games put themselves forward as original in their aesthetic, right? Like it's, even though I'm sure there are influence, of course, I think it's truly original. It's presented as this kind of, hey, look at, you know, this point of view from an artist, right? Whereas here I'm getting a very similar feeling aesthetically. There's a number of those games, but of course you're very aware of the fact that this is, you know, an encumbered history of the aesthetic of it. You know, it comes from a certain point of view, and maybe that makes it richer to me.
Certainly sets the mood in a different way, right? Like Doom 3 was kind of the first game that didn't have like a score. Like the sound, the audio track was like walking around a space station and monsters.
Right.
There was no music behind it.
Right.
And it set that like chilling horror score in a much more substantial way than like
Right.
relying on like cymbal crashes for you know, jump scares would have.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you gotta throw it at that.
There we go. Wow, that took me way longer than it should have.
Guess
I just
the
forgot.
glowing blue is the kind of sign, right?
I just completely forgot how to do that, even though I did it 5 seconds before coming upon that. Right. Oh, that reminds me though. It's like, oh, this just reminds me of teaching in a way. Right, where you teach someone to do something, and then not even, 5 seconds later, they're doing something very similar, but just in a slightly different context. And it's so easy just to completely forget everything that you just did.
Right.
Right. Even though it seems pretty apparent what you should do to an outside observer, sometimes it's just like your brain is not.
Well, we've been having a discussion on Discord about the differences between Latour and Bourdieu, and that what you just reported, David, would support Bourdieu over Latour. Latour has this idea, well, we just pick and choose all these little influences, and then they're like plugins, they're ready at hand. And for Bourdieu, wait a second, there are certain habits that are stickier, and so there's a resistance, a conservative kind of quality in our way of being in the world. We don't just grab anything that's useful just because we're exposed to it.
And even if you want to concede that rationality somehow exists, we're not rational in our decision making at all times.
It's also like a common critique of mobile gaming is that tutorialing is bad. It's just like read these 7 pages and then apply those systems. And so despite your lack of engaging with the tutorial in the way it was probably intended, it's a much better design than it would have been if it was just like, look in your journal to figure out how to use Ebola.
Can you run and jump to make that, I wonder?
Maybe.
Or we use the wind. You're supposed to use the wind.
There we go. There we go.
Show you the little print.
You abandon the little girl.
Can she? She's got to even be able to make that jump.
Yeah. Oops.
Up.
Ah!
You probably have to land on
Yeah.
the swan to keep it there. Swan?
Loon.
A loon.
Loon.
Alright, let's try this again.
There you go, dissing Minnesota again. You did
Mm.
it. You did it again.
It's just my own personal rivalry.
Whoop.
Around my house, we call it Minnesota God's Country.
Minnesota God's Country.
Tongue in cheek, but
They say that around her folks' places as well.
Oop, so there's
ooh,
our guy.
now we actually see them
Oof.
fully animated.
I actually have a large appreciation for
Ooh,
Oh!
just gotta throw the
Shoot,
thing.
shoot, shoot.
I have a large appreciation for Minnesota despite my constant overrun.
Fair enough. Get that bowler ready.
Yep. Come on, come on.
Now can you put the ice back?
Another one.
Toothpaste back in the tube.
Oh, come on.
Come on.
Oh, wait.
Ah,
No!
oh.
This is why I can't do video games. It's like I can see it. My hands, they don't do it.
Your hands would be better at it if you played more video.
Yeah, I can't.
I was fortunate to have a mother who appreciated the concept of hand-eye coordination.
I feel like all the stuff I did learning to play musical instruments, piano.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
bass, definitely
Oh,
played a huge role in my ability to play these games
Yeah.
until my age got the better of me.
As-
On my British panel shows, they talk about how people have like 11 senses rather than 5.
Hmm.
And one of them is like
Kinesthetics? No.
Well, visual kinesthetics, where like you can
Yeah,
envision
right.
where your body is.
Oh,
relative-
proprioception.
That's
too,
the
is
one,
something it's
yeah.
called, right? Yeah. You know, like the test they do, you know, the cops have you
Yeah.
do, does you know.
Yeah, it's like knowing where your body is in space in relationship to... Right, so that's how you can, weave your way through a crowded supermarket.
Always rewarding, reading for casual reading for the academic over like a holiday break or whatever is like Oliver Sacks, like the man who mistook his wife for a hat.
The mind's eye.
You learn a lot about this kind of stuff from him.
Oop.
Who the bull is, what he wants.
Yeah. Shoot.
Come on.
Ah!
Oh!
So close.
Oh, did you?
No, I did not.
Oh,
He
you
got
didn't.
me. See, this reminds me a little bit of Ori and the Blind Forest because at the end of a lot of levels in that game, there's this kind of chase sequence, and it becomes a really big like spectacle kind of thing, right? So there's one where like you finish a dungeon, right, and then the whole thing's like flooding with water, and you have to use your newfound ability to like. Oof.
For a second, I thought
There might be something to be said here. There's a critique of games right now that is frustrated at the notion of the villains always being like large and deformed, and there might be a critique to be made about the big man who burned down the village.
With the disgusting nose hair and the teeth and the
With the very like Wario look. Yeah.
Well, as with many things, we could probably do better if we consider Miyazaki, right? Like he is always pushing against those kinds of easy associations. There's never really a villain in his movie.
But I was gonna say those chase sequences sometimes are events in the I wonder how we can think about them as being like contiguous with, but also distinct from, you know, everything else that happens. Because for the vast majority of the time, right, we're not on a timer.
Sounds like there's some liminality involved in those chase sequences. Thomas?
But also they can be very like spectacular, right? They're a way of kind of taking you out from the rhythm and the tempo of the normal game, and then it pushes you into some different form of play.
For a hot second, there were these birds in the background, and I thought they were gonna like hook forward and like enter the plane where you're playing.
Yeah, I'm again reminded of Little Big Planet, thinking about that contrast we were just talking about. You know, that the first time in Little Big Planet, there was this kind of steamroller mechanic where something is coming from the left side of the screen and you just have to keep moving. It was a shock. The game is a different game after that because you realize that's possible. That may be what you have to contend with at any moment, and that's true here too.
But it does so in a way that doesn't feel out of place, right? Like so many games have those, like, for lack of a better word, mini-game-esque like mechanics to them that are distracting from the overall experience.
Right. That's got to be a big design challenge, right? Yeah. How do you do that without it being clunky
and disrupting the gameplay and the narrative?
Uh-oh.
Speaking of which, I was guessing that didn't work.
Oh.
I feel like these kinds of sequences are also hard to program because you always need to be able.
Ooh.
Yeah, this is wild. There's so much going on screen.
You also need to be able to like have that constant fear of danger, right? Because if it was just a chase and you could really get as far ahead as you wanted to, right? You could really just kind of practice the level and then not really have any form of danger.
The gating is important here.
Oh!
This turned bad.
That is not what I was expecting it to be like before.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, can you touch it and come back? Jump right back?
No. Okay.
Apparently not.
Just gotta figure out something else. Maybe I have to throw. Yeah, maybe I have to throw it somehow. Like a fetch.
No, throw it at the ice though.
Oh.
No.
Yeah,
oh.
Yeah, you did it. Oh no, you're fine.
Oh wait. Shoot. We were fine.
Didn't care for that.
Jump the gun.
Yeah, I think the fish are going to carry you.
Yep.
It's interesting that it's taken this long to have like a violence component to your character.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, and that's kind of why I thought, you know, I wasn't going to hit the bear, but I mean, it's not like I killed it, right? Or I really hurt it at all. I just kind of like bonked it on the head.
But by and large, there really hasn't been any attack to this game. Attack mechanic.
Yeah, it's more so been about avoidance, right? Go. Ooh. Ooh.
Okay.
Classic.
Oh, classic.
Yep.
Reminds me of Galaxy Quest, that wonderful scene in Galaxy Quest where Sigourney Weaver is in the engine room. There's like all these things like crushing for no reason. This episode was badly written.
It's an upside down womp block.
Yep.
Yeah. Whoa, 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 whoa. Can you both get through? I'm glad it didn't try to force it to follow you
Yeah.
as you were going.
I like how he just plods along.
It's close.
Ooh, something up there.
The secret.
A little further. There you go.
Yeah. Oops. No. Oh.
Oh, that was a
Ooh.
little gruesome.
That was. I don't think that's what
A little
the.
bit of a ragdoll effect.
Yeah, I don't think that's what was supposed to happen.
That's a bonus.
I think it's interesting to see this mechanic. I'm sure it must be in other games too, but obviously the famous ones are like the Mario ones and stuff,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Like we're talking about. But here it's the motion of the waves which actually in some ways is less arbitrary.
Right.
As
There's
a
reason
narrative,
for
there's
the
a reason for
levels
it. That
to
is the
shift.
way ocean water can
Rather
move.
than like your platform is bobbing in
Yeah.
lava
Yeah.
or something.
Whoop, whoop,
Whoa,
up,
oh.
up,
Oh,
up,
no.
oh.
Did you get a boost from that jump? Is
Yeah,
that
I got a little
very
boost from it. But now I got the thing that.
cool.
So I don't need it.
Ooh, gonna go for it.
Yep.
They do look a little more like teeth than I thought they would.
You gotta think about teeth.
No, I just,
Alright.
Oh, ooh, I got some.
Oof.
Probably need to switch back to the 5. No?
Wailing and gnashing of teeth. Wailing,
Yeah.
of course, there's
Yeah,
wailing.
wailing.
Yeah, it's nice to have you down here, Luke. My dad jokes, I know they're going to be picked up on.
Right, I'm guessing there's something up here. There we go. Ooh. Okay, I think I see what I have to do. Hey! Oopsie.
Yeah.
Ow! This reminds me a little bit of Resident Evil, which has a penchant for putting you in tight spaces with big monsters, and that's always like the most nerve-wracking to me.
it's convenient that the camera,
Oh.
the little shelf is just far enough away that the camera can get the whole,
Oops.
circle there.
How does that help?
Oh.
Oh, I.
And then
Careful,
you
careful.
follow-
Oh, shoot.
Oh, at least they gave you that progress.
Oh, can
Do
you,
I have to
like,
do it
I
again?
think you have to drop down and then climb back up and do the slidey jump. Because I think you get more speed on the height on the slidey jump, right?
And then she's gonna do the thing again. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Did you get those indicators the first time through, or is it because you didn't quite get it a couple of times?
No, I think they do those. Okay.
Oh, now you're not gonna be able to do the thing.
Beep. Ah. Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see how platformers are being used in recent gaming. So I think of like Celeste, that's just like a parable for like depression.
Mm-hmm. Go, go, go.
With like the kind of applied use of platformers. It's really interesting.
Oh, speaking of whale.
Alright.
Speaking of a whale.
As long as it's not just a skin, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not just Mario with like
Right.
material.
Well, that might. We're coming up on one. That might be
Yeah.
a good place to. end it. I think it's a gorgeous, gorgeous game.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Is that a whale or a turtle? Whale.
Well, yeah.
Looks like a right whale, and I heard recently the right whales are in deep trouble right now.
Oh, jeez. What is a right whale?
Hmm?
Gee, I wonder why they
Was it
didn't
supposed to
drown.
be a wrong whale or a left whale?
Actually, I think it got its name because it was the right one to target because it had the best
Oh.
whale oil or the
Interesting.
the high proportion or something. I may not be remembering that correctly, but I think that is where the name comes from.
Ooh. All right, I think we're gonna call it there. I don't know about y'all, but I kind of want to play it again next week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
wanna
we
play it
should.
again
It's
next week.
gorgeous.
It is awesome. So we will plumb the depths of the whale.
I see what
next
you
week.
did there.
Thank you everyone for joining us today for Lunch Zone, and we'll see you next week at noon to play some more of Never Alone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.